final principle we want to talk about, this really does apply more consistently to churches and ministries, but there's a kingdom-mindedness about those that have it versus those that don't. And honest to goodness, sometimes in the ministry, nonprofit, church world, we tend to be more competitive than we are cooperative. And I think a God honors a cooperative, kingdom-minded spirit versus competition. Talk about when we first started to discover that, and then we'll kind of hash it out together.
I think it's when we began to actually give away our resources a long time ago. And honestly, I remember too, just thinking about this is years and years ago, we were trying to sort out things and figure stuff out. And we were trying to call churches who were a little bit ahead of us at the time and trying to just get a little bit of an audience with them to ask a couple of questions. Couldn't get a call back. And I remember thinking, man, one day, if anybody ever really wanted to hear anything we have to say, I sure hope we got the time to talk to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's critical and something that's been built into our culture.
It is. I mean, we have a team full of people. How many people would serve other churches full-time? Tons of people. Their full-time job is to serve other churches. And at the time, that would have seemed, to put one staff member on it would have seemed irresponsible. And it probably was at the time.
Right.
But the more we realized that we invested in others, the more that we were given back. And it became not just a byproduct of what we were doing, but an intentional strategy.
Yeah.
That we're going to fight for unity, that we can do, that we need each other, that we can do more together than we can apart. Now it's a driving force really of who we are.
It really is. I feel like one of the real strengths of Life Church that God has given us is the ability to bring people together across a whole bunch of different denominational preferences and all that stuff. And I think it's been absolutely beautiful thing to see God do. And it's something that's really, God started in your heart years and years ago when we did the whole one prayer and then just kind of going from there about the prayer of Jesus for unity. You might want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so back when we started, churches were like literally in the same town would be more competitive. And we did something called One Prayer, where we invited churches to do a series with us together. And I think we had 2,300 churches the first year do one prayer. And each pastor would preach on what is your one prayer before God. If God would answer one prayer, what would it be? And then we took those churches and allowed them to give toward an offering to plant churches. And we worked with a church planting group that was planting international churches and planted hundreds and hundreds of churches. And together we did something that we could have never done on our own. And that was kind of the birth of realizing that it should not be about us. It shouldn't be about our name. It shouldn't be about my name. And so we want to focus to keep my picture as invisible, my name as invisible, as often as we can. There are times when it's wise to use those things, but it's not going to be about us. It's going to be about Jesus and us serving others. And that's the kind of thing that people can get behind.
Right. I think one of my favorite things is whenever, we started giving our resources away, and as you take about, we scrub our brand and any logo or anything off of them. And we've had people who attend Life Church come back and be like, you're never going to believe this. And I'm like, what? I can't believe that Pastor Craig stole that series.
Right.
I'm like, well, what series? What are you talking about? And they're talking about a sermon you preached in like 6 months, a year ago. And I'm like, no, that church, no, that's our series. We did that. Pastor Craig did that. That's not their series.
Yeah,
and so,
but oddly enough, though, is that it feels counterintuitive to be generous or kingdom-minded. And we found like at our campuses that might be struggling, oftentimes they're more inward-looking. And if you want to have it, you want to give it away. And I would say, how can we do it? A lot of churches say, we can't give away our resources. We don't have what can you do? I would just say, look at what you have and ask, what can you do with what you have?
For sure.
If you get new choir robes, maybe you can give the old ones away. If you get a better church van, give the other church van away.
Absolutely.
If your building's vacant on a Saturday night, ask, could another ministry meet there for free on a Saturday night? If you've got old hymnals, can you give your hymnals away? And so all of us have something that we can give to be a blessing to others. And we just know those that have it tend to be kingdom-minded, and those that don't have it aren't.
Okay, I really want to hit this real quick with you because a lot of people back, yes, I'll be generous when?
Right.
When I get to the point where I feel like I can be and I can give away, but that's not where it really started for us.
No.
Let's talk about when the decision was made to actually give away all of the resources where people normally could be paying for those.
Yep.
What was the environment like around here?
Well, I don't even want to say a number because we were in so much debt then. We are debt-free now. That we're more generous. When we were not generous, we were highly in debt.
Absolutely.
And so it was really one of the tightest times of finances for us. when we started to give away. And that's why I always try to tell pastors or leaders, don't wait until you have a lot to give. Start when you don't have much. And if you give when you don't have much, then one day you might have a lot.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, less people think, oh, okay, so that was when it was, 2006, when you gave away all your resources.
Yep.
It's actually not where it started. Not in my opinion. When I hear the story of Life Church, you see the seed of kingdom-mindedness and being able to be open-handed all the way back to the first weekend and the first offering call.
Yes.
Talk about what God said to you and what you had to do in obedience that planted a seed that is now today.
It's impossible to describe how significant that moment was, but we had about 40 people in borrowed green felt back chairs in a 2-car borrowed garage, which the only thing we owned was an overhead projector someone donated to us. We had no phone number, no office. We didn't yet have a bank account. And we received our first offering that day. And right before we did it, I felt prompted to do something that was scary. I said, if there's anybody here who has a need for a place to sleep, for food, you could take back out of the offering. And as the buckets went by, sure enough, there was a guy that looked like he probably had a need. And he reached in the offering and he took out, and God met his need on that day. And that's something that we've been saying from the very beginning and continue to this day. And I think it was that moment of obedience, which was honestly scary, that helped spark something that is making the difference that it is today. And so I would just say to whatever pastor, whatever leader, look what you have, ask, how can you give today? If you give a little today, you might have a lot of it to give tomorrow, because those that aren't generous don't tend to have it.